All right. Good morning, George. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate you taking the time to do this. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks, Rabbi. How about yourself?
Doing great, doing great. So, as you know, we're doing this series where people can learn about each other in the shul, especially when things are not fully operational still for the congregation. And people can stay at home and watch these videos on their own time to learn about the synagogue community. And if you can, there are some people who are new in the community or maybe haven't crossed paths with you. Maybe just give a little bit of background about yourself and um, some personal history generally of how you got to Richmond and what you do and what takes up your day.
Okay, sounds good. Well, my name is George Copeland, George Grandis Copeland. The Grandis is the Jewish piece of my heritage, which is deeply rooted in Richmond. My great grandfather was one of the founders of Cole Emis, so that's a fun fact. And I guess if you don't know what that is, it was well, Rabbi could probably
Young
better.
Israel, yeah, it was a Young Israel congregation, part of the Young Israel movement for much of its existence here. And
Yeah.
one of the traditional congregations in town.
hmm So that's cool, and that's definitely something I get to look back on and learn about through random people. But anyways, um, what else? I started actually at Beth Ahava and went to Sunday school there, and I ended up moving to Israel for a year. And while I was there, I met a wonderful guy named Ben Packer. And when I came back to Richmond, I was, I think, called by you directly saying a guy named Ben Packer, or a friend, he's a friend of yours, said that we
Yeah.
should meet.
So
So
we
we
have
ended
this
up,
amazing kind of, I guess, unusual kind of matchmaker, so to speak. And maybe some people don't know Ben Packer. And I think it's neat and fascinating to learn about, well, how you all became connected in terms of the organization, in terms of what happened all the way over there in Israel.
yeah, it's an interesting story because honestly, it's not just him I owe thanks to for all this. There was a Madrachim, right, on this program. So Madrich, who I was very close with, probably the only one I really appreciated in this group, decided out of nowhere to come up to my room because, like this interview, I overslept, and he came up and said, "You need to come down and meet this guy who's speaking right now, or at least come to the speech. Maybe not even meet him,
And,
but."
and just the translation for people who don't know Hebrew, madrich is a counselor. So it's like a dorm counselor or something like that.
Yeah,
He came to you and said, "Hey, you got to meet my friend Ben Packer," or something along
it
those.
was the weirdest thing. He literally came, sat on my bed, woke me up, and said, "Hey, man, you got to come down for this event." And that's not a normal thing for a madrich to do. Like,
Yeah.
if you don't show up, whatever.
Yeah. What program was that?
It was Young Judea's year course.
Okay. Very cool.
Yep. And so at the time, I was in Jerusalem in like one of their, it's actually their main area. They have three different ones. So Jerusalem, the Negev, which is the desert in the middle of nowhere, just in a town. It's the craziest thing. Um,
So you met Ben Packer, a rabbi visiting your campus.
Yeah, and so I met Ben, and then he had me over for a Shabbat dinner. He lives in the Old City, which is really cool, and he is the director of Heritage House, which is a really cool place you can go and stay.
Yeah, it's a neat organization. And you stayed there for a little bit?
Yep, he invited me for a weekend. I stayed with at the Heritage House and went to Shabbat at his house in the
I
city.
think the Heritage House is it's a really cool organization. A lot of people here don't know about. So what was your experience like over there? What is it exactly? It's like
Uh,
it's like a youth hostel, but it's got a twist to it, right?
yeah, so the twist is you can stay, I believe, as long as you'd like, as long as you give back, or you can prove that. So like if you're making aliyah and you're joining the military, you can stay with him leading up to that, experience. And while you're with him, you basically just volunteer. he's got a million different projects that he works on to, renovate the city or do whatever. And so you're just helping him with these projects. In return, he's going to give you food and shelter. That's the basic summary.
That's really cool. And you get to live in the oldest city in the world, or you get to live in the holiest city in the world. That's pretty awesome. The old city. What was it like being in the Jewish quarter for you? How did you find it?
I mean, it doesn't get much more holy than that. So
you're able to feel it, because us Americans, we're not used to that.
Yeah, I mean, that I'd say that goes for the whole Israel experience. When you touch down, it's a different energy, but truly once you enter the old city, it's inside. You can't really explain it. You have to visit. So
you had this friendship with him, and then when you came back to America, he put us in touch, and then kind of you started coming to Beth Israel.
Yeah.
How did you hold on to your Israel feelings? I know you feel very strongly about the country. I know you have some family there.
Mm-hmm.
Has Israel played a role? Why are you so passionate about it?
That's my grandfather took me there when I was really young. He took the whole family for I had cousins living there at the time, and so I was probably 10, and we all flew over and did like a 2-week tour of the country and celebrated bar and bat mitzvahs of my cousins. And that really was a meaningful experience. I really look up to my grandfather, and I think just that in combination with that experience, which again, you can't put into words until you actually visit, really hit me. And then I went back for, it was a partnership program called P2K that was through the JCC, and there was like a partnership community. I want to say it was Emic Heifer, if I can remember properly. And so we switched, we stayed with a family for, I want to say 2 weeks, and then they came and stayed with us the year after. And that was a really meaningful experience. And I don't know, there was a connection. I really appreciate the military piece too, because my dad was military. And then when you go there, you just see it everywhere. And I'm like, wow, this is cool. It's not like here where you don't see it at all. And I knew it was the best trained military in the world. So that was also a big piece of this, because when I went on this course, I was able to do the basic training. They're the only country in the world that allows non-citizens to join and do the actual experience, but not actually commit to the full military experience. So I got the training, but I didn't have to commit to the time.
So I know you had a special relationship with your grandfather. What are one or two of the biggest things that you can think of in terms of the lessons that he gave you, as we kind of start talking about your business background or just about life?
Yeah, that's fair. Well, I can say one irony about our relationship is almost every time we connected, he's always reminding me, make sure you get your education. And I'm like, okay, Grandpa, thank you. And so the irony is I never completed college, but I did start a company 7 years ago. This is technically my second startup. Started one when I was younger, which led to a corporate job, which then brought me back into entrepreneurship. Yeah. And so that's one thing for sure. The other thing is building. Like, I thought I was going to be a builder coming out of college or out of high school. Yeah. And so I've always had an appreciation for architecture. It doesn't really correlate much with, actually, that's not true. You mentioned, like, did I do this background, for example? Right. I'm as soon as we end this call, I actually have one other, but after that, I'm going to go back to my garage where I'm going to continue to do construction stuff. So I grew up with a hammer in my hand because I was always on his sites. Yeah. And that's something I appreciate.
So tell us a little bit about your startup background, the mentality in terms of how you've developed as an entrepreneur and where you get this entrepreneurial spirit and this, this confidence in yourself to build something from the ground up. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Thank you. Yeah, confidence. That's an interesting. I guess I do have a lot of confidence in myself.
It's just me. I think that entrepreneurs they have to have a certain amount of confidence in order to kind of go out on their own without any safety net underneath them.
Right. Yeah. It's this wild it there's no choice but to succeed, I guess. Like that's what I chalk it up to. They say a majority of businesses don't succeed, and every year it's a different percentage, but I
Mhm.
don't see myself ever failing, only because I'm willing to do whatever I have to, sacrifice whatever I have to make sure that the company survives, which isn't always the easiest thing. I've had to, you know, sacrifice a lot of social time and give up a lot of experiences for it. But there's, I don't know about the confidence part. The funny thing is, the more that you become like immersed into your industry or whatever you're doing in business, I think that there's a flip to it. You actually become less confident because you realize that there's just so much competition and there's so much depth to everything you do
But
that.
you're in deep enough that you just keep going.
Right, exactly, because you can't give up at that point. And so you just keep digging and digging. And I mean, my company's been profitable for, um, well, it's had to have been, because I started out with no money,
Yeah.
barely profitable for quite a while. It became profitable. Now I'm reinvesting a ton of money into sales and marketing. So I'm trying to balance
Yeah.
investing. And
But
so,
it took a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of less than tasty dinners and meals and
yeah,
that stuff that you kind of hear about or think about. Is that fair?
that's very fair. Yeah.
So,
Um,
well, people here don't know what you do. So what's the
I
quick?
should probably say that, yeah.
Yeah.
I do digital marketing. So I sit in this chair all day for the most part now, especially with COVID. And I do cool things like, let's see, I could show you, or I can just talk about it. But basically, we strategize how to find people leads for
Mhm.
their businesses, find businesses leads. That's a good way of
Yeah.
saying it. And for every industry, it's different. We specialize mostly with contractors and law firms.
Hmm.
So, for example, our main two metrics for our business is the cost per lead and how many leads we can get a business. So there's a law firm here locally. Actually, one of our congregants just got hired by them, I noticed. So that's cool. But
Oh,
this law firm, we're generating over 100 qualified leads a month for them at less than $40 a lead, which is really nice when it's a law firm where they can be making a lot of money, a lot more than $40.
well, what's the proudest moment you can think of based on your business so far? Is there a client experience that you've had that you can that you can look at and say, "Hey, this comes to mind as one of my favorite moments or proudest moments since I started the company."
Hmm. It's a good question. Keeping clients is always a very proud thing. Like the moment that I mean, I got a text from a guy like a month ago, 2 months ago. He didn't really have much money starting out, so we worked out a deal where it was like a ramp up. And at the end of that ramp up, he sent me a message saying this is the best experience or the best decision he could have ever made for his business. And he was super grateful. So anytime we get feedback like that, it's a really proud moment.
Right.
And I
Because
guess oh,
yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
There's one guy that he was in debt like 150K, and if he didn't get out of debt, he was going to lose his business.
Mhm.
And we're still working towards that, but positive momentum. So it's kind of a pet project of ours, because sometimes he can't necessarily afford his monthly budget, and he's a roofer, so a lot of investment, and he's got to flip it, and sometimes people don't want to pay. So
Yeah, it's really neat because people sometimes forget that behind every business are people and their families and their own personal lives for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
So, what do you predict in terms of 21st century, for the lay of the land for startups going forward? What do you think it's going to be easier after coronavirus? Do you think it's going to be more difficult in this country? What do you think in terms of people who, they just they have what they have that spirit that you seem to have in terms of wanting to build things from the ground up, from business
Yeah.
perspective. How do you think the landscape is going to look for them as they try to navigate, all these challenges?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that the actual action of becoming an entrepreneur is much more intimidating than the actual day to day. I think that, just like I said in the beginning, and there's probably other congregants that can relate to this that are entrepreneurs. If you believe that you're going to find a way and you're willing and you just know that you've got to make those sacrifices, you're going to do it. You just have to you have to not be arrogant to the fact that you have to find a solution for your customers and not think that your way is the right way. You have to always adapt. Where I started 7 years ago and where I am now is a completely different business. And it just takes a lot of time to figure out exactly where you fit. But as far as the question of what does it look like, I honestly believe entrepreneurship is going to continue to thrive or to continue to grow. And like, for example, we have a few people we spoke to recently that want to start in January, and they were let go from their businesses. And, that they're saying that it's the best thing that's ever happened to them. And when I was in my corporate job, I thought it was the best thing ever. But when I was let go, I didn't realize until then how toxic it was. And I'm so grateful for that because it taught me a lot, but I'm in a much better spot now. So I think that through COVID, a lot of people are going to be let go, and they're going to be faced with that decision where they've got like enough saved up that they can say is now the time to do it. And typically recessions are where startups actually thrive, and because they're more scrappy, they're more agile, and so they can adapt to the economy and the culture a lot easier.
Yeah, no, a lot of people don't realize you do a lot of volunteering. We're familiar with Federation. We're familiar with some of the volunteering you've done here in the Jewish community, but a lot of people aren't familiar in the shul with junior achievement and the nonprofit work that you do on behalf of our local students and our youth. So,
Yeah.
I think if you could kind of describe the organization and your efforts with them in terms of, what that the nonprofit junior achievement hopes to achieve, I think that'll be real interesting for folks.
Yeah. Did I tell you that? How did you know?
Well, we talked.
Okay, fair enough. I couldn't remember. Anyways, I'm really proud of the fact that I was invited to be on the junior board for junior achievement, and that's super cool that you asked that question because
I'm supposed to know things, so
I guess so. Great memory if I did. So if anyone hasn't heard of Junior Achievement, it's the largest nonprofit in the education sector. And so what their mission is to teach kids, and I think they've moved to kindergarten, but really it's like first through middle school, I think is as far as they go. And it might even be fifth grade. I should know these things. Anyways, so what they do is they teach you about credit. They teach you about entrepreneurship. They teach you about anything financial for the most part, and getting your foundation in life. The things that they should teach in school are what this nonprofit teach. And they have an incredible center here at the Libby Mill Library. It's the entire third floor of the Libby Mill Library. If no one knows,
no, I remember. I know that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's like the science museum, but for financial literacy up there. It's like you can choose different lifestyles. Like, do you want an unlimited plan for your cell phone, or do you want a regular plan? Do you want to live in a big house or a little house? What type of car do you want to drive? And based on your decisions, this is just one activity of many up there. It'll tell you how much you need to make, and it'll tell you what type of career you probably need to get into to be able to afford that type of lifestyle. And then there's another activity where they will give you credit cards, fake credit cards, and you have to learn how debt works and how you got to pay it back. And it's just, I mean, to put that experience in kids' hands at that age, usually the elementary school age, is pretty incredible, because I think that. And then anyways, a third example I personally really like is they team you up with entrepreneurs like myself, and they have like a Q&A and a planning your life to get to where you want to be. And part of that whole, it's like a 3-stage piece. So one is the Q&A interview, another one where they're actually like planning out their life. And then another one is they're actually building a brand out of these, what are they? You drink out of a straw.
Yeah, the tab.
Yeah, they're like fuzzy, and anyways, and so you can make a brand, your personal brand out of that, and they get to talk about why it's their brand and figure out why branding is important. And so anyways,
that's cool. Well, it's so important because, the reality is that we know that Americans aren't spending enough money. They're not putting away enough money.
Yeah.
They're not thinking long term, which is a really big problem for a country, for society, for people's mental well-being. So it's really awesome that you kind of get out ahead of that. So how does Judaism kind of inspire or inform these decisions that you make, or how does Judaism play a role in what you're involved in professionally or on a volunteer basis, in terms of some of the areas that we talked about? I mean, clearly when it comes to Israel, Judaism plays a role, but what about some of these other issues that come up in your life as you journey forward?
That's a good question. Judaism is it's a way of life, obviously. It's something ingrained in you that I'm finding it difficult to give you a true it's doing the right thing, and therefore there's a lot of things that I've learned through Judaism that I naturally integrate into my work and giving back. And I'd like to do more of that than I can at the moment. But in general, Judaism it's a nice community that I can relate to and feel like entrepreneurship. I'm sure I can tie it in better than I am currently, but my grandfather was an entrepreneur, and obviously his great grandfather was, and I feel like in a sense it's kind of my duty to do that through them, and all of my aunts and uncles in a way are just because of their careers. So I don't know if I feel like Judaism is absolutely tied into that in a way.
Yeah. I know for a number of years you were part of our Beit CC program downstairs with Jason Kaplan, and we had a nice group down there that would kind of explore the weekly Torah portion and some of the prayers and liturgy. And that was just one of several different examples in terms of being involved with the synagogue or in the shul. What are your thoughts about all the different times that you've come to Beth Israel, and what has been your experience? What do you like about it, and how has it kind of helped you or made an impression on you? Going back now about 7 or 8 years, I think.
Right. Yeah. Right around when I started the business at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thank you so much for bringing that up, because I get to talk about Jason Kaplan, who has also had a great impact on my life. And when you mentioned correlation with Judaism and business,
right. He was
Jason.
a great community leader for us, and of course, a lot of us are still in touch with him. But yeah, he started this program, and it's still going. It's hard during coronavirus, but that's just
Mhm.
one, I would say, connection point. There have been, a bunch. So yeah, if you can speak to those.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. There have been many. But Jason, not only in Judaism was a great foundation, like yourself, by the way, you definitely are magnetizing towards, I can speak to myself, I'm sure many others will agree. And so, but you introduced me to Jason. Jason was founded the Spade CC program, which I would love to be more involved in. Again, and he not only did this really cool experience where we more like roundtable talk about Judaism, which I think is an incredible way to go about it, but he also introduced me to a lot of business networking experiences and introduced me to a lot of my earlier clients, which without him, I would have had an even more difficult or more bumpy road starting out. So through my engagement with KBI, I can absolutely say that my business is in a much better place because of that. And so I, yeah, looking back to that, I'm surprised I didn't immediately make that connection, because I've actually told him that many times over and over, like how grateful I am for his involvement with my company,
Yeah.
just
Well,
being a
it's
supporter.
really exciting to kind of hear about coming from a place of the unknown to a kind of a more informed place. Talk about how Judaism and Beth Israel have kind of played a small role in that.
Mhm.
Amazing to see what you've created. Now you're employing people and helping these people kind of professionally get their start as well in many ways. So it's cool to see an actual, company kind of forming and hitting a good place or a sweet spot. And I know there's much hard work ahead, but we appreciate you taking the time to talk about yourself and talking about your experiences in Israel and the shul work and your family's a long history and important history contributing to the Richmond community. So thank you very much for taking the time, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Rabbi.
All right, take care. All the best.
Same.